Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tiger Tank 12, having to call me, I don't really care, and welcome back to World of Tanks. And today we're going to be having a little mini review of the AMX CDC. This is one of the, I think, 6 or 7 tanks that will get an update and a buff in the upcoming patch or the patch after that. The AMX CDC is going to get some buffs in the area of fire, power, and mostly in gun handling stats. So stats that you actually will not be seeing in the stats bar right here, but you will actually feel in the game. And what they're going to be doing is they're going to decrease the aim time. They will decrease the dispersion while on the move, and also when you're turning this tank around, or when you're, just turning on your tracks. Yes. The AMX CDC, this is a tank that was first introduced a very long time ago. This was one of the first French tier 8 premium tanks, I think. Not just premium mediums, but also premium tanks. And it certainly was the first tier 8 premium French medium tank. And it's a very special tank. As you can see, it's very big. This AMX CDC is very, very large. It has a big profile, very long. It has a huge engine compartment, as you can see in the back. Has like 2 fans to cool the massive engines, and yes, that's one of the reasons why this tank is such a large vehicle. If you just compare the size to other French medium tanks, maybe the Lorraine 40T is also very big. You can see that the French have something for large medium tanks, but if you compare it to the Bourrasque, it just really, this thing like is a dwarf compared to the AMX CDC. But yes, the CDC, it hasn't really been very well or very good in a long time, and I'm not really sure if it ever was a good tank or a great tank. I really enjoyed this tank. I have played quite a couple of games in it, 63% win rate, and I still like to play this tank occasionally. You can see I have 2 marks of excellence. I think I need about 2,200 or 300 DPM, damage per game to be able to get the 3rd mark of excellence. But I'm not really sure if I'm going for that because, playing the CDC too much is probably not a lot of fun. We're going to get into those points in just a second. So let's take a look at the firepower. You're running a 90mm gun, which for tier 8 medium tanks is pretty standard. 212mm of pen, which is also pretty standard. Average damage is 240. Pretty standard there. You have a good rate of fire, 10.17 rounds per minute. That's obviously with a good crew and with consumables and with equipment. So if you put all of that away, it's probably still going to be about 9.5 rounds per minute. And the gun traverse speed is great, 42.33 degrees per second. You have 10 degrees of gun depression, 20 degrees of gun elevation. So all of these stats are, looking pretty damn good. You also have 90 rounds on this vehicle, 90 shells. It's a huge tank. It has a lot of ammo, and you have APCR as premium ammo. The APCR shells have about 259mm of pen. That's about 47mm additional pen that you are missing out on the AP shells. So yeah, I think the gun characteristics aren't looking too bad. Aim time is 1.8 seconds for a fully aimed in reticle. That is obviously with the equipment that I have on this tank right now, with the gun laying drive, and also with the premium consumables and the crew. 0.31 dispersion at 100 meters. It doesn't sound too bad. It sounds like a quite effective and accurate medium tank, and the aim time also looks quite effective as well. Now I have to say, I don't think that this is really the case. When I play this tank, I noticed that it takes way too long to aim in and that the bloom is pretty crazy. I noticed that RNG on the AMX CDC, like I miss a lot of shots, even with a fully aimed in reticle, that I don't usually miss with a tank that has 0.31 accuracy at 100 meters. Now if we compare, let's jump over to maybe a tier 9 German medium tank, which is the Leopard Prototype A, which we might have sold because I don't see it in my garage right now. But we can go over to Detect real fast and we can take a look at this vehicle. If it's fully upgraded, we can check the stats real fast. So this thing has a dispersion of 0.34 at 100 meters. If you have the same kind of equipment, you can probably put it down to about maybe 0.29, 0.28, and it doesn't feel as bad as it feels, as this tank feels. I don't know, maybe it's just personal preference, but I have the feeling that the AMX CDC just, like, at longer ranges it does struggle quite a bit, even though the dispersion values are quite good. But I know it's the dispersion for 100 meters, but I think that usually it's not as bad. So we're getting to the crux, to the one thing that really destroys this tank in my opinion, and we have to be honest, I think it's okay, it's great to have a tank such as this in the game, because it's a very special kind of combination. You have 1,400 hit points for a tier 8 medium tank. That was a lot back in the days. That's still, I think, about average, but you only have 30 millimeters of frontal armor on the turret and on the hull, 20 on the side and 20 on the rear. This tank is going to get perma destroyed by any shell. Doesn't matter if it's high explosive, AP, or APCR. High explosive shells for this tank are such a threat that you are like a huge target. You're free damage for artillery. If you're playing the CDC and artillery does spot you or they see you, they will start shooting at you because they have the opportunity to actually penetrate your tank. That's what happened a couple of games ago, where M53, 54, M53, 55 actually managed to destroy my engine compartment and set me on fire. So yeah, I have 20 millimeters of armor, and the M53 has enough pen to go right through there. He knocked me out with one shot. That was not a lot of fun, but that can happen if you're playing the CDC. That is the biggest weakness of this tank, and we're gonna get to the point why this tank just isn't really, it's not really a part anymore of World of Tanks. I don't think that they're selling it anymore on the shop. It's no longer available for purchase here. You can buy the Revalorise, but you cannot buy the CDC, and I think that's for a good reason. But we'll get to that in just a second. Mobility-wise, this is probably the best or the most mobile tank you can get at tier 8, not because of the top speed. The top speed is actually less than the Lorraine and the Bourrasque, but what you have is 1,200 horsepower in that engine. That is massive. You're 34.5 tons on this vehicle. That's crazy. You have 34.78 horsepower per ton. Like, you can accelerate in 2-3 seconds to the top speed of 57 kilometers per hour. So you're able to actually run away quite quickly. So if I actually put on other equipment such as turbocharger or maybe improved rotations, we can make this tank even faster. We can make this tank with the increased with the turbocharger, we can probably get an additional 5 kilometers onto the vehicle. So we would be at 62 kilometers per hour top speed, and we get 10% additional engine power. That's 120 horsepower on top of the 1,200. So yeah, that's pretty crazy, but I don't think you need it, to be fair, because this tank has the horsepower. You don't really need the turbocharger, in my opinion. It's already quite fast. Maybe for the top speed to increase it a little bit, but other than that, I don't really think you need it. You have 50.1 degree or 0.1 degree turn rate per second with your tracks. So this tank is, it's very mobile. It's very quick, and that's the main reason why people like this tank, or used to like this tank. The strong suits of this vehicle obviously are the mobility and the firepower, and the concealment and the spotting aren't too bad either if you have a good crew, if you put everything into the right categories. Concealment right here, it could be a bit better if my commander had like the fully trained concealment perk, but I don't have that, and I think still you can work with that for a medium tank. It's quite large, so you're not expecting the best concealment, but still I think you can work around with that. The biggest issue that you have in this vehicle is definitely survivability. This tank is not going to survive a lot of shells, and high explosive is something that a lot of seasoned veterans will be using when they see this tank, because hey, it's easy damage, 30 millimeters of frontal armor. They expect to bounce nothing. And now we come to the place, or to the point, where we have to talk about the current meta and the current state of the game. The AMX CDC was introduced into World of Tanks when their armor obviously was an important part of heavy tanks and other vehicles, but it didn't really transform over to other categories, to other classes. Medium tanks, tank destroyers, they didn't really have massive amounts of armor. That obviously did change over the time. There were certain tank destroyer types that were based on heavy armor, and then certain medium tanks that have gotten a lot of armor in recent time as well, such as the Object 430U or the Soviet Tech 3 medium tanks, which kind of went into the direction of main battle tanks. And yes, obviously the CDC couldn't hold anymore. It cannot really be in the same room. You have to be extremely careful with this tank. You need to be playing very passive, and certain maps will not allow it. I think the gun is also not as good as certain other guns that you have on vehicles. I think it can work. It's a 90mm gun, but there are tanks out there, premium tanks, non-premium tanks, in World of Tanks at this stage of this game, where you have basically 330 or 20 alpha, you have almost the same rate of fire, and you have 4 times the amount of armor that this thing has. So yeah, go figure. So yeah, tanks like the Object 274E, or I'm not really sure what it's called, you know, the new, yeah, the Object 274. That thing is just, you know, what can you say about the AMX CDC that would give you like this redeeming kind of thing? Why would you play a tank that doesn't give you the edge that you have with other tanks such as the Object 274 or other vehicles such as the STG or the T-44-100? They're all not that different mobility wise. They can also get up to speed, maybe not as fast as the CDC. But yeah, the CDC used to be a tank that you would play like extremely aggressively on the sides, where you would go flank and go into like certain positions early on, and then you'd always be on the move. You never sit in one place, because if you sit on one place, you're going to get absolutely decimated by enemy vehicles as soon as they spot you. So yeah, I don't think that the CDC really has a spot in World of Tanks anymore at tier 8. It has been convoluted with so many different tanks in there that have so much armor, that are just, you know, so powerful that you can't really do a lot with the CDC. So there's a lot of frustration potential with this tank, but maybe also quite a bit of a reward if you're really looking for a challenge, because the CDC is not very easy to play, and I don't think a lot of players do enjoy the CDC anymore. Although it does combine the crazy speeds, it does combine a lot of those things. And if we are being honest, the Progetto 46 isn't that different from the armor layout, you know, 60 millimeters, but still at least 80 millimeters on the turret, 60 on the side, and 60 at the front of the hull. But you have this auto reloader, and that makes a big difference, trust me. So yeah, I'd say let's jump over into the gameplay section. Let's see what this tank can do, what it cannot do, and I think that will probably wrap up the CDC for now. So the gameplay that we're actually going to be watching is on the map Himmelsdorf. Now that's probably not the place where you would be looking for a good match in an AMX CDC, and I can say for sure that usually that's not somewhere where you are going to be having a good experience with this tank. Now, you can see that the top speed of this vehicle is just amazing. We have already reached the 57 km/h mark, and that is just something that you have with the CDC. You have that crazy engine that just produces so much power that you're able to take the lead really, really quickly and go from point A to point B very, very quickly. But you can also see the massive size of this thing. It's very, very long, and it's a very big target. Such a big target indeed that a lot of tanks will be shooting you as soon as they see you, especially artillery, because artillery likes to shoot easy vehicles. So yeah, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get to the hill. I get a very lucky shot right there into the UDES 03, and what I want to do right here is I actually want to support my team around this corner. I'm not sure if the artillery was aiming on purpose towards me, or aiming for the Lynx 6x6, But luckily for us, he doesn't really do enough splash damage to do a lot of damage to us. We do spot someone in the middle, and it's the M4A1 Revalorize. This is exactly the place where you want to be in your CDC. You have a great rate of fire. A vehicle such as the M4A1 doesn't really need any kind of special aiming. You just have to shoot and hit it. It doesn't have a lot of armor. You don't have to be really worried about your shots going through it, because the 212 millimeters of pen will be more than enough to go right through there. And this is where you can utilize that DPM advantage that you have and that really good rate of fire. Now, unfortunately for us, we do get caught outside by the Bourrasque and by the AE phase 1. And that's obviously our fault, because what are we supposed to be doing up here like that, where we've lost nothing in a place where we have to utilize our non-existent armor. So we have to work with our HP. We've just lost about 800 HP, and that has hurt a lot. So we'll have to find a way to actually be able to deal some damage up here without getting ourselves into those sticky situations where they can actually shoot us. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to alleviate some of the guys that are currently having issues with tanks pushing our cap. And because we have a very strong kind of hill at the moment, we have a lot of tanks up here, and they've just pushed right through the middle into our cap. And that's where I'm trying to utilize the great armor, or the decent gun, the great gun. Unfortunately, right there, we only track the T-34, but still, getting that assistance damage, we cannot really complain about that too much. But you can see we're losing tanks on the right and on the left, but it seems to me at least that we are finally getting rid of the guys that are currently camping our cap, and we have taken a bit of space back on the mountain. So right there we can see a T-34. Now with the movement that we have here with this vehicle in a situation like this, in a game like this, the speed can be of great assistance for you if you have to push somewhere very quickly. But to be fair, like on a map like this, it's not like you really need to have 57 kilometers per hour, because you cannot really get away from them. But right there you can see the great rate of fire. We hit that Panther 2, like the accuracy isn't too bad. We managed to do quite a bit of damage to him. Unfortunately, our Italian buddy dies right here, and the other Italian buddy, our target, just decided to pop around the corner. What I'm trying to do right here is I'm using the 10 degrees of gun depression. The issue is, while you're out here being like this, I obviously have a decent gun handling, I have great gun depression, I have a good rate of fire. I want to support this IS-3 as long as I can. I do spot the G-SOR and I managed to hit him once. The issue is that if you're out in the open like that, you're a huge target for artillery. We get really lucky that the arty didn't pen us, but unfortunately the second shell, or the shell from the Bourrasque right there, managed to finish us off. So in the end, we were taken out by the artillery and by the Bourrasque. And it just shows you that this tank, I mean, if you're in an engagement like this, there's not a lot of things you can do. We have to help out this IS-3A, right? We cannot let him die. But maybe, like, the question right now in this instance, if I think back to, just a second earlier, maybe I still have the free camera mod installed right here, so I can just fly over there and we can disable everything. What you can see over here, hopefully the radio range is enough, is the Object 26. Wait, let me check real fast. It's the Object 263. Yeah, he is basically pinned down in this location. We have two tanks over here. We have the Indian, we have the Panther 2, and we have a Udes somewhere out on the field. So if we can actually take on the RU-251 over there and the Object 263, we would be able to probably deal with these guys up here. The issue is I would have had to abandon the IS-3A. He is currently fighting with 110. They still have RTPs, and the artillery was basically in the end my death sentence. The thing is, I didn't have enough HP to sit here and tank a shot, because the Bourrasque with his two shot magazine would have probably just finished me off. So in the end, I think maybe if I would have sacrificed the IS-3A, we would have been able to take on the Object 263 and the RU-251, you know, go down there, help with the, you know, assist those two guys. Then maybe the sacrifice of the IS-3A would have been worth it, because he maybe would have been able to take out this guy and deal some more damage on the G-Sor and maybe the Burask, because he's an auto-reloader. The issue is, obviously for me, in this situation, I thought that I needed to assist him. I thought that maybe we had enough tanks down there, because it's like 4 tanks versus 2. In the end, unfortunately, they did not manage to do a lot right there, and I do get hit by the artillery in this instance. And I think if I would have driven away, the Burask would have made his way around and probably put 1 or 2 shots into my rear, or maybe into the IS-3A. So yeah, this was more of a good game, in my opinion, in the AMX CDC. It's only about 2,200 damage that I dealt. It's really difficult in these situations to do really well in an AMX CDC. That's one of the reasons why I would really not recommend this tank anymore, because it just doesn't really fit the meta of the game very well anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons why you should probably look for another option. The Burask is definitely better than the CDC. It has better camouflage values. It's just as fast. You might not get the acceleration as quickly. You might not be able to turn on the spot, but the Burask has that punchy gun. The Burask is really fast. It's a great light tank / medium tank. It's completely different from the CDC. But the CDC has its points. The CDC has its moments. If you're able to play on those forest maps, where you can sit behind a little bit, you know, in the back, be the second line of offense or second line of defense. But, you know, I don't think that there are a lot of situations where the CDC is doing really well. There are a lot of other tanks that would do really well in that category and would probably outperform this tank by a lot, because there's nothing really making this tank extremely special except for maybe the mobility that you have. But yeah, I'm gonna round this up. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this little review. If you did, as always, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Until then, have a good one and peace out.